Gilad Shalit, born the 28th of August 1986, is an Israeli sports columnist and a former MEA soldier of the Israel Defense Forces. On 25 June 2006, Shalit was captured by Hamas militants in a cross-border raid via underground tunnels near the Israeli border. Hamas held him captive for over 5 years, until his release on 18 October 2011 as part of a prisoner exchange deal. During his captivity, Hamas turned down requests from the International Committee of the Red Cross to be allowed to visit Shalit, claiming that any such visit could betray his location. Multiple human rights organizations criticized this stance, claiming that the conditions of Shalit's confinement were contrary to international humanitarian law. The Red Cross insisted the Shalit family have the right under international humanitarian law to be in contact with their son. The only communication in the early months came through an intermediary, who claimed that a low-ranking Hamas official, Ghazi Hamad, asked him to convey to Shalit's parents assurance that Shalit was alive and was treated according to Islam's laws regarding prisoners of war. In other words, he had been given shelter, food and medical care. The United Nations fact-finding mission on the Gaza conflict called for Shalit's release in its September 2009 report. In its 27 May 2011 Deauville Declaration, the G8 demanded Shalit's release. Shalit's capture has been deemed a kidnapping and abduction by many sources. He was not granted any visits from the Red Cross and was not allowed to communicate with family members, and a ransom, even if not of a monetary nature, was demanded for his return. The only contact between Shalit and the outside world after his capture and before his release were 3 letters, an audio tape, and a DVD that Israel received in return for releasing 20 female Palestinian prisoners. Shalit was captured near the Karim Shalom crossing in Israel, and held by Hamas as a hostage at an unknown location in the Gaza Strip. Hamas' initial demands of releasing of all female and underage Palestinians as well as Marwan Barghouti were not met. On 18 October 2011, he was released in a deal that secured his freedom after more than 5 years in isolation and captivity, in exchange for 1,027 Palestinian prisoners, including some convicted of multiple murders and carrying out attacks against Israeli civilians. Shalit was the first Israeli soldier captured by Palestinian militants since Nachshon Watchman in 1994. Shalit, having a rank of corporal in the IDF's Armor Corps at the time of his capture, was promoted to Staff Sergeant, Sergeant First Class, and then Sergeant Major on the eve of his release. Personal life. Shalit was born on 28 August 1986 in Nahariya, Israel, to Noam and Aviva Shalit. He has an older brother and a younger sister. He was raised from the age of 2 in Mitzpah Hilla in the Western Galilee. He graduated with distinction from Manakabri High School. He began military service in the Israel Defense Forces in July 2005, and, despite a low medical rating, chose to serve in a combat unit. Following his older brother, Joel, into the Armored Corps, he holds dual Israeli and French citizenship via his grandmother. Antecedents. The capture of Shalit was one of the more notable events that took place during the June-July 2006 flare-up of hostilities between Gaza and Israel, the others being the Gaza Beach explosion and the Muammar family detention incident. Noam Chomsky has drawn attention to the cause and effect and also to the differences in treatment in the Western media between the Muammar kidnapping, that took place a day earlier, and the abduction of Gilad Shalit. The Israeli army seized the 2 Palestinian Muammar brothers in an overnight raid into the southern Gaza Strip on 24 June 2006. Who allegedly were members of Hamas and were planning attacks on Israel. The army did not provide details on the nature of the alleged plot. Hamas said they were sons of a member but were not involved in Hamas. According to a report of the Israel Army Radio, published nearly a year after the occurrence, the IDF had received a warning on 24 June 2006. the day before Shalit was captured, about a planned abduction. Israeli security forces entered the Gaza Strip and kidnapped the two brothers. The report said that the brothers were transferred to Israel for interrogation, and that the information extracted formed the basis for the warning that militants would try to enter Israel through tunnels to capture soldiers stationed near Gaza. As of January 2012, the brothers were still in an Israeli jail, held without trial for over 5 years. Capture. On June 24, the day before the seizure of Gilad Shalit, Israeli forces had crossed over into the Gaza Strip and had seized 2 Palestinians whom they claimed were members of Hamas. Early on 25 June 2006, Palestinian militants from the Izz ad-Din al-Qassam brigades, Popular Resistance Committees, and Army of Islam crossed into Israel from the Gaza Strip through an underground tunnel near Karim Shalom, and attacked an IDF post. 2 Israeli soldiers were killed and another 2, apart from Shalit, were wounded. 2 of the attacking Palestinian militants were also killed. Shalit suffered a broken left hand and a light shoulder wound, and the militants captured him and took him via a tunnel into Gaza. Shalit's captors issued a statement the following day, offering information on Shalit if Israel were to agree to release all female Palestinian prisoners and all Palestinian prisoners under the age of 18. The statement was issued by the Izz ad-Din al-Qassam brigades, the Popular Resistance Committees, and a previously unknown group calling itself the Army of Islam. Shalit was the first Israeli soldier captured by Palestinians since Naxon Watchman in 1994. His capture and the following cross-border raid by Hezbollah, resulting in the capture of IDF soldiers Ehud Goldwasser and Eldad Regev into Lebanon, occurred prior to the conflicts in Gaza and Lebanon during summer 2006. The high-ranking Hamas commander whom Israel considers responsible for masterminding Shalit's capture, Abu Jibril Shamalai, was killed during the violent clashes between Hamas and the al-Qaeda-affiliated Jund Ansar Allah organization in Gaza in August 2009. Rescue attempt. Israeli forces entered Khan Yunis on 28 June 2006 to restore quiet after repeated rocket attacks. Freeing Shalit was not one of the objectives of the mission called Cast Lead. According to an Israeli embassy spokesperson, Israel did everything it could in exhausting all diplomatic options and gave Mahmoud Abbas the opportunity to return the abducted Israeli. This operation can be terminated immediately, conditioned on the release of Gilad Shalit. On the same day, 4 Israeli Air Force aircraft flew over Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's palace in Latakia, because Israel views the Syrian leadership as a sponsor of Hamas, according to an IDF spokesperson. The operation did not succeed in finding Shalit. On 29 June, the commander of the Israeli Southern Command, Olaf Yoav Gallant, confirmed that Shalit was still in Gaza. Israel's Minister of Justice, Chaim Ramon, added that Shalit was being held in southern Gaza. Specifically, a military correspondent for the Israel Broadcasting Authority said that Shalit was being held captive in Rafah in southern Gaza, and that there was indication that he was still alive. However, IDF spokesperson Brig. Gen. Miri Regev said, "We are not convinced he is being held in southern Gaza, only that he is being held in Gaza." On 1 July, the BBC reported that Shalit had been treated by a Palestinian doctor for a broken hand and a light shoulder wound. Israeli government authorities threatened that the sky will fall if Shalit were harmed. On the same day, Shalit's captors demanded that Israel release an additional 1,000 Palestinian prisoners, and end Israel's incursions into Gaza. 2 days later, the captors issued a 24-hour ultimatum for meeting their demands, threatening unspecified consequences if Israel refused. Diplomatic efforts. Prime Minister Ehud Olmert immediately ruled out negotiations with Shalit's captors, demanding his unconditional release. There will be no negotiations to release prisoners, the Prime Minister's bureau said in a statement. The government of Israel will not give in to extortion by the Palestinian Authority and the Hamas government, which are headed by murderous terror organizations. The Palestinian Authority bears full responsibility for the welfare of Gilad Shalit and for returning him to Israel in good condition, the Apostolic Nuncio to Israel, Archbishop Antonio Franco, attempted to secure Shalit's release via the Catholic Church's Gaza-based parish. He was not successful. In September 2006, Egyptian mediators received a letter in which Shalit wrote that he was alive and well. The handwriting was confirmed to be that of Shalit. In October, Egypt was also reported to be negotiating with Hamas on behalf of Israel for Shalit's release. On 28 October 2006, the Popular Resistance Committee said in a statement that all three parties had agreed to a proposal by Egyptian mediators regarding Shalit's release. The PRC did not provide details, but said that the Egyptian proposal would include the release of Palestinians held by Israel. It was the first time since Shalit's capture that any of the factions indicated that his release might be imminent. In November 2006, Hamas leader Khaled Mashal indicated that Shalit was alive and in good health. On 9 January 2007, Abu Mujahid, a spokesman for the captors, asserted that Shalit has not been harmed at all. He is being treated in accordance with Islamic values regulating the treatment of prisoners of war. However, he threatened, "We have managed to keep the soldier in captivity for 6 months and we have no problem keeping him for years." On 17 January 2007, one of the captor groups, the Army of Islam headed by Mumtaz Dormush, claimed that Shalit was being held exclusively by Hamas. On 8 March 2007, Jerusalem Post reported that an agreement had been reached with Hamas over the number of prisoners Israel would release in return for Shalit. Israel and Hamas were still negotiating specific prisoners who Hamas wanted freed in return for Shalit. On 7 April 2007, it was reported that Shalit's captors had transferred to Israel, through Egyptian mediators, a list of Palestinian prisoners they wanted freed. The list included names of approximately 1,300 prisoners, some of whom were high-ranking Fatah members. On 25 June 2007, a year after Shalit's capture, the Izz-ad-Din al-Qassam brigades released an audio tape on YouTube in which Shalit is heard sending a message to his family, friends, and the Israeli government and army, and appealing for a prisoner swap deal to be reached to secure his release. Shalit said that his medical condition was deteriorating, and that he required immediate and lengthy hospitalization. On 4 February 2008, it was reported that Hamas had sent Shalit's family a second letter written by him. The handwriting was confirmed to be that of Shalit. Shalit's father Noam met with former United States President Jimmy Carter during Carter's April 2008 visit to Israel. Carter planned to visit Khaled Mashal of Hamas in Damascus later. Noam Shalit said that the fact that Carter was not considered pro-Israel could be beneficial in securing his son's release. On 9 June 2008, it was reported that Hamas sent Shalit's family a third letter. The group had promised to send them a third letter after mediation from Carter. The handwriting was confirmed to be Shalit's. On 12 August 2008, Hamas said that it was suspending talks on Shalit's release, demanding a complete lifting of the Israeli siege. The decision angered Egypt, a mediator for Shalit's release. Hamas in turn criticized the Egyptians for linking the opening of the Rafah border crossing with Shalit's release, a condition to which Hamas refused to agree. On 20 August 2008, in his briefing to the United Nations Security Council, the Under-Secretary-General of the UN appeared to link the decision to release 200 Palestinian prisoners to the case though Hamas spokesman saw it as an attempt to increase Palestinian internal divisions by releasing only those loyal to the Fatah faction. On the 11th of May 2010, Russian President Dmitry Medvedev called for Shalit to be freed as soon as possible. He made the call while meeting Hamas leaders in Damascus, Syria. The Russian president urged solving the problem of releasing Israeli citizen Gilad Shalit as soon as possible, his spokeswoman said. Russia is the only country that has direct dialogue with Hamas. Hamas leader Khaled Meshal reportedly said Hamas would only consider releasing Shalit when Israel resumed talks to free Palestinian prisoners. President Mahmoud Abbas called for the release of Shalit in a press conference with visiting German President Christian Wulff. Negotiations for release Shalit's father had blamed the U.S. for blocking talks on his son's release. Netanyahu responded to a pilgrimage march called by Shalit's father for his release by saying he was willing to release 1,000 Palestinian prisoners in exchange for Shalit, but that top Hamas leaders would not be among those released. In early 2011, Egyptian-moderated negotiations continued between the Israeli government and Hamas, represented by Ahmed Jabari. Haaretz reported that Israel proposed a prisoner swap, and threatened that if Hamas rejected the proposal, no swap would occur. Hamas responded by warning that an end to negotiations would lead to Shalit's disappearance. Negotiations were hung up over disagreements between the two parties regarding Israel's unwillingness to release all of the so-called senior prisoners into the West Bank, a demand Hamas rejects, and regarding the particulars of releasing prisoners who were leaders of Hamas and other organizations. On the 11th of October 2011, the Pan-Arabist Al Arabiya Network reported that Israel and Hamas had reached an agreement on Shalit. Netanyahu convened a special cabinet meeting to approve the Shalit deal. Shalit's release negotiations include the release of 1,027 Hamas and Palestinian prisoners by Israel. Despite poor relations with Israel at the time, the Republic of Turkey played a significant yet silent role in Shalit's release. President Perez has also publicly thanked Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan for showing compassion to an Israeli soldier even as Turkey stays at odds with Israel. On the 18th of October 2011, Shalit was transferred to Israel. The IDF transferred him, via helicopter, to the base in Tel Nof, where he was reunited with his parents and met the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In the base he went through medical tests. It was found that he was malnourished and suffered from vitamin deficiencies. When the tests were completed, he was then transferred by helicopter to his home, where many who supported his release waited outside his house to see his return. Shalit subsequently began to rehabilitate with IDF assistance. Israeli society perceptions and activities. The vast majority of Israel's citizens are in favor of the deal, although a vocal minority opposes it, creating essentially two camps. One camp supports the release of Shalit on Hamas's conditions. According to the Dahaf polling institute, 79% of Israelis favor this deal, which would include the release of over 1,000 Palestinian prisoners and the deportation of some of them outside the territory of the Palestinian National Authority or restricting them to Gaza. A second camp said that Shalit should be released, but not on Hamas's conditions. They argue that the correct approach is to protect Israelis if the prisoners are released. According to the Dahaf polling institute, 14% of Israelis are in this camp. Others believe that the disagreement among the Israelis represents rifts and changes within Israeli society. Attorney Dalia Gavrieli, a lecturer at Bar-Ilan University, said that the camp opposing the prisoners' deal is holding on to a view of collectivist society, in which the individual was expected to sacrifice himself for the good of society. The camp supporting the prisoner release is expressing, however, a high value on the sanctity of life, that symbolizes a shift to a more privatized society. Noam Shalit, Gilad Shalit's father, urged the UN to take all possible measures to implement the findings of the Goldstone report. The Goldstone report called for Shalit's immediate release and, while he was in captivity, for access to him by the International Committee of the Red Cross. On the evening of Shalit's 23rd birthday, on the 28th of August 2009, thousands attended a vigil for Shalit of the Western Wall, and dozens of activists protested outside Defense Ministry headquarters in Tel Aviv, slamming Defense Minister Ehud Barak and criticizing IDF Chief of Staff Gabi Ashkenazi. Jewish Internet Defense Force organized in August 2009 a pro-Shalit campaign on the social networking site Twitter. Twitter users drove Shalit's name to the second highest trend on the day of his 23rd birthday. Tweets for Shalit ranged from the demand, "Free Shalit," to requests for international supervision of the case. In several incidents during 2009, leaders of the campaign to free Shalit demonstrated at the prisons in which Palestinian detainees were held, preventing visits by Palestinian prisoners' families. One such demonstration at the Erez crossing on the Gaza border blocked the passage of food and medicine to the Gaza Strip. Israel said it would not ease its blockade of Gaza until Shalit was freed. The abducted soldiers' long plight was an extremely emotional issue within Israel, with large, tearful rallies on his birthdays and frequent media appearances by his father, reflecting wide support for the cause. One Israeli TV anchor ended his daily newscast by mournfully reciting how many days the soldier has been held captive. Israeli opponents of such a deal spoke out, warning that releasing top Palestinian militants could result in the deaths of many Israelis in renewed attacks, as well as increased Palestinian motivation to kidnap more soldiers in the future. Israeli analyst Dan Skufkan called the possible swap deal the greatest significant victory for terrorism that Israel has made possible. On 17 October 2011, Purdue University professor Louis René Beres made the case against freeing Shalit in an op-ed column in the Jerusalem Post. No modern government has the legal right to free terrorists in exchange for its own kidnapped citizens, military or civilian. Under long-standing international law, every state has a primary obligation to protect its citizens. Yet it appears that tomorrow, Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will exchange Palestinian terrorists for kidnapped IDF soldier Gilad Shalit. Any such exchange, however humane to Shalit and his family, would imperil thousands of other Israelis.